On se bat peut-être, ça fait longtemps. Touch go.
We'll start with this. Well, Frank Sanchez has this to say. He said, I've asked to fight Michael Hunter. All I've heard are crickets. He was quoted as saying, I've asked to fight Michael Hunter, and all I've heard are crickets from Eddie Hearn and Hunter. Eddie says he has a problem, that he pays his fighters too much, and they don't want to fight anyone. Well, with what he pays, I'll fight anyone. Like I've said previously, give me Hunter, Joe Parker, F.A. Ajagba, Junior Fa, anyone. I will prove my ability in a big fight. We will see what happens, but I want to step up, Sanchez said. I have full confidence in my team, and my team has full confidence in me. Every day in Cuba, I dreamed about one day becoming heavyweight champion of the world. Now I'm here in the United States training with the best trainer in the world, and I have the best managers and promoters. It is a dream come true. Sanchez is trained by Eddie Reynoso, who also works with Canelo Alvarez, Ryan Garcia, Andy Ruiz, and Oscar Valdez. The skillful Sanchez is co-managed by Mike Borrao and Guadalupe Valencia. The former cruiserweight also is promoted by Warriors Boxing and aligned with Al Heyman's premier boxing champions. As the PBC puts together its summer schedule, Sanchez hopes to return to the ring against a ranked opponent. I've already fought on major TV with the PBC, and I feel very blessed, Sanchez said. But the job is not finished. I want to prove that I'm the best and become the first heavyweight champion in the history of Cuba. That is the reason I'm anxious to fight other top contenders and separate myself. I will become a champion for my family and everyone who believed in me. These sentiments expressed from Frankie Sanchez are similar to his previous set of sentiments we discussed here on the channel. For those that missed that video, I'll leave the link to it in the description box. And not much has changed as far as what Frankie Sanchez is saying, but it's curious that he's mentioning Michael Hunter by name.
You want a Michael Hunter fight, do you?
Granted that Frankie Sanchez mentioned a couple of guys. You know, he mentioned Joseph Parker, he mentioned F.A. Ajagba, he mentioned Junior Fa.
He did.
There does seem to be a special focus on Michael Hunter in particular.
Why is that?
Well, Frankie Sanchez basically told you why. Because of what Eddie Hearn pays these guys. That's why. It's not because Frankie Sanchez is facing some scarcity of opponents on the PBC side of things. They got a stable of heavyweights over there. But from where Frankie's sitting, it's a more lucrative option to lock horns with Matchroom's guys.
Ain't that about a bitch?
Here I thought Al Heyman was the money man, but apparently not. Apparently one of his fighters, because that's what Frankie Sanchez is. He's aligned with the PBC to some degree.
The article says.
Seems very focused in aligning himself with Eddie Hearn to some capacity to lock horns with one of Eddie Hearn's fighters, as Frankie Sanchez views that as a very lucrative opportunity. Understand that Michael Hunter, he's not a big ticket seller. This guy hasn't arrived yet.
Shit, he's making his bones too.
From the sound of Frankie Sanchez, you'd have thought he was talking about Dillian White or somebody like that. Somebody who is further along in their heavyweight campaign, someone who is more established.
A marquee guy.
At least more established than Michael Hunter is. I will say, comparatively, Michael is further along than Frankie is right now. The best name on Frankie Sanchez's resume is Joey DeVaco. That pales in comparison to the name of Alexander Povetkin, who Michael Hunter drew with in his last outing. And that draw with Michael Hunter, well, speaks volumes to where Michael is. That he could draw with someone as seasoned, as experienced, as skilled as Alexander Povetkin, both as an amateur and as a professional.
Michael went the distance with that guy.
While he didn't secure the victory, while he fought to a draw with Alexander Povetkin, that draw does speak volumes, as there are plenty of heavyweights out there. Full-fledged heavyweights, not cruiserweights who moved up in weight like Michael. There are plenty of heavyweights out there They can't go the distance with a guy like Alexander Povetkin, but Michael Hunter did. That's good luck, especially for a cruiserweight who's basically moved up in weight. There's only a few fights into his heavyweight campaign. Michael is a tad bit more established at heavyweight than Frankie Sanchez is.
And Frankie's calling him out.
And I'm not against that, you know. I'm all for these up-and-comers, these prospects, locking horns with each other in order to separate themselves from the rest of the pack, from the rest of the bunch.
Do it.
Only the strong survive. So I get it. Not against it. I just find it curious that he would look to a matchroom fighter when he's got fighters.
On his side of the street.
What's the matter? You worried you're not going to make the money with a Junior Fa, an F.A. Ajagba that you'd make for a Michael Hunter? Is it that you feel that Uncle Eddie's pockets are deeper than Uncle Al's? That's what it looks like. And you got Dominic Breazeale, Adam Kopnowski, Charles Martin, Andy Ruiz, Luis Ortiz, F.A. Ajagba, Junior Fa. You got guys on your side of the street. But the headline for this article, it's not in reference to any of them, is it?
No, it's about a matchroom fighter.
And it can't be a coincidence that Frankie Sanchez himself is the one who brought up what Eddie Hearn's paying these guys.
And that's his motivation.
The truth is, there are no belts to fight for on the PBC side of things. So, while they might have their own heavyweight roster of fighters, a good number of those fighters are going to be looking to go elsewhere for opportunities, for the chance to become world champions, for the chance to make career-high paydays.
That's more or less what this is.
You hear about the kind of money that Eddie Hearn's boys and girls are making, so you want to get yourself a fight with a matchroom fighter.
He's looking for a payday.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually the name of the game. It is prize fighting after all. I wouldn't mind if Frankie Sanchez got this fight. I don't think he will, but better still, I wouldn't mind if he did. It's just that Michael Hunter, he's likely got other things in mind coming off of that draw with Alexander Povetkin. From where he's sitting, he might feel like he's got bigger fish to fry than a guy who's even lesser known than he is.
Yeah, I don't think this fight happens.
Credit to Frankie Sanchez for keeping an open mind and keeping his options open, but realistically, I don't see this fight happening in the near future, if at all. Moving on. Abner Mares had this to say. He says, I have basically every 130 to 135 pounder wanting to face me.
Every?
All right, if you say so. Well, he was quoted as saying, I'm flattered, I'm happy, I'm excited. I'm sure these guys see me as a name they want to put on their record. I'm a big name, obviously because of the accomplishments I've had in boxing. It's a joy. It's a good feeling knowing these fighters still consider me a top opponent despite my absence in boxing.
Yeah, I don't think that's why those guys are looking at you.
The 2004 Mexican Olympian has won major titles at bantamweight, junior featherweight, and featherweight during an incredible run at the start of the past decade before suffering a shocking first-round knockout at the hands of Johnny Gonzalez in 2013. It's unreal. You mentioned Tyson. These guys still mention his name. Notes Mares. I'm not trying to put my name alongside Tyson, Mike Tyson. He's a different league and from a different time. It's a good example, though, because it's exactly what's happening with me. I've been out for 2 years and now basically have every 130 to 135 pounder wanting to face me. It's great. I love that everyone wants to face me because I'm more than willing to fight anyone. The parallel here being made between Abner Mares and Mike Tyson is the recent excitement that Mike generated as soon as video surfaced of Mike being in training, working the mitts. Mares is intended to be the parallel for this, as Mike created excitement, and I guess that Abner feels that he's creating excitement, since, both he and Mike are on the proverbial comeback trail. But, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I hate to be the one to rain on Abner's parade. But he's not actually creating excitement by being targeted for either a Ryan Garcia fight, that never was, or a Gervonta Davis fight, that never was. They're not picking you because they still view you as a top guy. Quite the opposite. They're picking you because they see you've been inactive for 2 years. They see you coming off a loss and you campaign at the lighter weights, but you do happen to have a familiar name, a mildly familiar name, thus that makes you an attractive opponent option. That's why they're looking at you. Because you got a familiar name, but you seem beatable, given the circumstances. They're looking at you because you're coming off a loss and you've been inactive for 2 years. Not because they think you're a top guy. That'd be like saying that Gennady Golovkin picked Vanez Martirosyan because he viewed him as a top guy.
And we all know he didn't.
He picked Vanez as a tickover, a lighter touch in the build-up of what was to be the Canelo-Alvarez rematch. He didn't view Vanez Martirosyan as a top guy, and what were Vanez's circumstances at that time? He was coming off a loss, the way that Abner's coming off a loss, and he was inactive for roughly 2 years, the same way that Mares has been inactive for roughly 2 years. I'll tell you something. There's looking for the silver lining. There's looking on the bright side of things. There's optimism. But there is also delusion.
And being delusional.
To be completely honest, that's how Abner Mares sounds to me when he says he's got everybody from 130 to 135 looking at him. You had two guys. That's who was looking at you. Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia. That's hardly everybody.
Neither of those two fights materialized anyway.
Abner says he wants to become a world champion in the 4th weight class.
I don't know how the fuck that's gonna happen.
Because I'll tell you, I don't see this guy winning a belt from any of the belt holders. His best bet would be one of those world titles that they're holding becoming vacant, thereby allowing him to compete for it against some guy in the top 10, top 15, whatever. I don't see Abner Mares beating Miguel Pichelta. I don't see him beating Jamel Herring. I don't see him beating Jojo Diaz.
You already got beat by Leo 2 times.
It's the only belt that's on Abner Mares' side of the street, the PBC side of things, the WBA title that Leo Santa Cruz is currently in possession of. Leo Santa Cruz, who supposed to be fighting Gervonta Davis. In the near future, most every other belt is on some other side of the street. The IBF is on the Golden Boy / DAZN side of things. The WBO is on the top-ranked ESPN side of things.
And the WBC title's there too.
So aside from what world champions Abner would have to go through to become a world champion himself in a 4th weight class, there's that to consider, but there are also the politics to consider. Just before there even is a fight, the politics themselves must be reconciled.
Is he gonna be willing to cross the street?
Or will he set some astronomical asking price that makes the situation with him a non-starter? I mean, you've been inactive for 2 years. How much are you expecting to get paid under those circumstances? When you're coming off a loss, you haven't fought in 2 years, obviously not in possession of any world titles.
What are you expecting to make?
Tell you, these recent comments from Abner make him seem a bit delusional. That's all I'm saying. And finally, Guillermo Rigondeaux had this to say about Naoya Inoue and Nonito Donaire. I want them, but do they want me? He was quoted as saying, "You know I'm always doing something. I stay 100% ready for whatever comes. Boxing is already starting to move," Rigondeaux told George Ebro. "You can see it now. Look at all these younger guys. The day I don't come to train, they miss me. I'm the one who pushes them. I always train to support myself because this is a very hard sport, so I go to the extreme in all my workouts. I've already been warned that I might return by the end of August 8th or 21st. Already, Luis de Cubas, my manager, warned me. He asked me if I was ready. I replied, today, I'm ready to start fighting in the backyard of the house. That's how big the urge is to get back in the ring. Luis tells me where to fight, and I'm going. I'm a 118-pound champion. Anyone who wants to fight me knows where they can find me. It's always been that way, and it's never going to change." Two potential big-name opponents for the future include Naoya Inoue and Nonito Donaire. Let's see if they want to fight me. In the end, it's all about that. It's not what I want, it's if they want to fight me. I don't know why it's so complicated to do the fights that everyone wants to see sometimes. It's a fair question that Guillermo's asking. It's not whether or not he wants them, it's whether or not they want him.
Do they?
Guillermo is holding the lesser version of Naoya Inoue's WBA title, and in that way, he's in line for a fight with that guy. We've talked about that fight here on the channel, that potential matchup, and I'll leave the link to that video in the description box. One angle of this conversation that I don't think we've quite covered, quite explored, is a potential rematch between Guillermo Rigondeaux and Nonito Donaire. Very soon, Nonito Donaire is going to be challenging Nordine Oubaali for his WBC title. And if Nonito emerges the victor, I can see that Guillermo Rigondeaux rematch happening. I can see Nonito giving Rigo an opportunity to win that belt from him, as it was Nonito Donaire himself who expressed enthusiasm, excitement, prospect of that fight happening at 118 pounds. That was earlier this month.
Nonito's on board.
He's open to a Guillermo Rigondeaux rematch, and Guillermo seems open to it as well. I can tell you that both of these guys have seen better days, both Nonito and Rigo. They're not the exact same fighters that they used to be, as they are both approaching 40 years old, with Nonito being 37 and Guillermo being 39. Guillermo is 2 years older than Nonito, but it's a fair play kind of situation, as they're both still part of the same age group, and even though Guillermo's 2 years older than Nonito, Nonito's been in more ring wars than Guillermo. As it stands, Guillermo's only lost one professional fight, one professional match, and that was at the hands of Vasyl Lomachenko in a weight class that Guillermo really didn't belong in.
He was daring to be great.
better still, here today, a rematch between Nonito and Guillermo is an even match. It's an even playing field for both combatants, for both fighters, as both of these guys did not exactly what they used to be.
They're older.
But they're still lingering. They're still floating around, and they both feel they've got more left in the tank.
In spite of them both being past their prime.
This reminds me of the Roy Levesta Jr. versus Bernard Hopkins saga. Their two fights. The first one having taken place in 1993, one that Roy Jones Jr. won. The subsequent rematch didn't take place for many years later, well over a decade, close to 2010. That's 17 years between the first fight and the second fight. With Nonito and Rigo, it seems similar, though nowhere near as much time has passed. It's only been 7 years since Rigo defeated Nonito Donaire.
Roughly 7 years.
Back in April of 2013. Some time has passed. Not as much time as there was between Roy Jones Jr. and Bernard Hopkins' first and second fights, but better still, it has been a considerable amount of time since that first Rigo versus Donaire fight. So you can see the parallel, you can see the correlation. And in this potential sequel that I liken to Jones versus Hopkins 2, it is possible that Nonito Donaire might have enough left in the tank to avenge that loss.
Same way Bernard Hopkins did.
It's because, comparatively, Nonito Donaire looked quite formidable against one of the most dangerous fighters in the bantamweight division, Naoya Inoue. He took some of Inoue's best shots, kept on coming, kept on fighting. Whereas the guys that Rigo's been dealing with as of late, Ceja, Solis, these are hardly the best and brightest fighters in the division, and in those fights, Rigo really didn't look his best. He's looking very human. Strange, but Nonito Donaire looked better in defeat against Inoue than Rigo looked in victory against either Ceja or Solis, and that sets the stage, that sets the precedence for what could be a rematch between the two. I'm not against it. We don't have to worry about the politics of boxing stifling this fight, as yes, Rigo is a PBC fighter, but it just so happens that Donaire's upcoming fight with Nordine Oubaali for the WBC bantamweight title, that fight was picked up by the PBC's Tom Brown. That fight was going to be staged under the PBC banner. Thus, the logical segue thereafter, if Donaire emerges the victor, is to have that Rigo fight, devoid of any politics that might stifle it. The bottom line here is, depending on how the stars align, Donaire versus Rigondeaux 2 is a realistic possibility.